To anybody who wants to follow along on the YouTube stream, you can do so over at the Shy Hat channel, which is located, whoops, I should be going to here. Okay, so it's just going to be over here. I will be sharing this link in the chat. Okay, all right, so, oh, that's some streamception right there. Hold on. Okay, so everybody, we're going to be, so today's going to be just a little bit of review. If you participated in the session where we were doing programming loops, it should be stuff you've covered before. But if not, then you've got something new to learn. That's great. Okay, so let's see. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. So what are we doing today? We're doing programming loops. So, for example, programming loops are tools that programmers use to run the same instructions multiple times. So for here, we've got for I in range 4, print I, and it's going to print out these 4 numbers. So it's going to print out, so 4, when we use this range 4 function, it's going to include 4 numbers, but remember, we start counting from 0, and that's why the number 4 doesn't print out. So let's see, I think we're going to be using our onlinepython.com website to do some of our Python programming today. To everybody in chat, the link can be found over here. And you'll see that once you load up the online Python website, you'll see that there's a bunch of code already here. So what I want everybody to do is go ahead and delete everything here. So you can just highlight it all, and then you can just delete it. And then after it's deleted, you can start writing your own code in there. So everybody, let's try writing a simple loop. Okay, so this is going to be where is it? This is going to be a for loop, and it's going to print out 4 numbers. Let's try this one out here. For I in range, and then in the parentheses 4, print I. So let's write this one. Let me make this a little bit bigger, okay? So this is a for loop for I in range 4, and then we hit the enter key and it's going to indent for us. So the for loop is a code block, and that's why we need to indent everything inside the block. You'll know that you're writing a code block because you have a colon over here. So the colon is going to indicate the start of a code block. Somebody's asking for the link for the online Python, so I'm going to copy it for them. Okay, to that person, here you go. And after you load up that page, you're going to want to delete all the code that's already there so you can start writing your own code. So for I in range 4, we're going to print I. So you might be asking, why do we use this? Why do we use I? So usually inside of programming, we use when we're inside of a loop, we'll refer to a variable inside the loop as I, but it doesn't need to be the word I. It doesn't need to be the letter I. It could be number, but just remember that you have to replace any variable names like this. So we've replaced this for number in range 4, print number. So after you've written this, go ahead and run that. Go ahead and run it so you can just hit the run button down here. And then it's going to give you the output over here, the output 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay. And if you manage to write this code and then hit the run button, and then you get the 0, 1, 2, 3, please type in the chat, "We're looping." Okay, so I see some people are looping. That's great. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about these loops. So the code repeats the instructions 4 times. Each time the value of I is printed. The first time I is 0, then 1, then 2, and then 3. It stops before the number 4 because it started counting from 0. So these are 4 loops we're talking about. There are 2 major types of loops in Python. There's for loops and while loops. We'll cover the for loops first. Somebody just joined and they need the link. So I'm going to grab the link for Online Python over here. And I will provide it to the person who needs the link. Okay, there you go. Just remember, user UF, you need to delete all the code that's already there before you can start writing your own code. Okay? All right, so where were we? Okay. So there's for loops and while loops. We're going to cover for loops first. The for loop for loops are instructions that repeat for each item in a set. So in the case of this function over here, range 4, it's going to be 4 items. This is what the function does. It makes a little list. The loop stops after the instructions have been performed on all items in the set. So any object that can be referenced by index can be used in a for loop, including strings. So here we've got animal equals frog, and frog is a string with 4 letters. So let me catch up with chat. Okay, somebody else doesn't have the link. So I'm just going to quickly grab the link. Okay. So any object that can be referenced by index can be used in the for loop, including strings. So we've got our animal equals frog. For I in animal, we're going to print I. So remember that when we use the for loop, the variable I over here is basically for each object inside of the list or inside of the other object that has indexes. So in this case, I is each letter. So if we were to run this loop over here, we get frog. Each time it's going to print a different letter from the string. Okay, so let's try this really quick over at our online Python. We're going to make so animal is going to be, let's make the animal the hacker frog. Okay, so the animal is the hacker frog. For I in animal, we're going to print I. So this is just a loop right here that is going to use this variable, and it's going to print each index, which is each letter inside of the variable. Okay. So after you write this code, you hit the run button, and then it's going to print each one of these letters. So first the H, and then all the way over to the G at the end. Okay, just like it is over here. All right, so let's move on. So to write the for loop, so this is basically talking about how to write the for loop. I'm going to skip over most of this because we've already been writing these for loops, so we kind of understand how we construct these. But if you have any questions about how to write these loops, please let me know in the chat, and I'll try to answer your question. The most important thing we have to understand when we're writing these for loops is that we need to include the colon at the end over here, and that's going to start the code block. And after we do the colon, on the next line, we have to make sure there's a space with the instructions inside the code block, okay? All right, so next. So the next type of loop we're going to talk about is the while loop. The other type of loop is the while loop, which, unlike the for loop, does not have an assumed end condition. So this is our typical while loop over here. And the while loop is, in this case, it's going to, in this case, the while loop has the following end condition. The end condition is count less than, count is less than 3. So if count is less than 3, then the loop is going to execute. So count starts at 0. So this loop is going to repeat 1, 2, 3 times. So after it goes 3 times, then count is going to equal 3 because there's an instruction in here to increase the count by 1 each time the loop executes. Okay? So let's try writing this loop now. So first of all, over at Online Python, let's delete all the previous code. And we're going to set our count variable to 1. Sorry, we're going to set the count variable to 0. And then we're going to create our while loop. So while count less than 3. So this is the beginning of the code block. So we've got our colon, which means it's a code block. While count less than 3, we're going to print the count. And then count is going to be increased by 1. So this symbol right here means we're going to add some number to the total. And in this case, the count is going to be increased by 1, and then the loop is going to repeat. So there are only 2 instructions here. We're going to print the variable count, which is this over here. First it's going to be 0, then it's going to be 1, and then it's going to be 2. And then when it becomes 3, then this condition is going to return false, and then the loop is going to end. All right. So everybody, let's try writing this code over here, and then I want you to hit the run button, and then your output should be 0, 1, 2. Okay. So everybody, try writing this one over here. If you run this and you get the 0, 1, 2, please type in the chat while loop and a smiley face if you like. Okay, some people are writing the while loop. I like to see it. I like to see it. Thank you very much. Okay, so next. All right, somebody says that they're looping user CT. I see you. Okay, so the while loop is I think it's the more interesting type of loop inside of Python. So the loop keeps running until the count variable is no longer less than 3. So this is the true condition. So if this is true, then it's going to execute. When it's no longer true, then the loop is going to stop. Each iteration of the loop prints the value of count, then increases the value of the count by 1. We can see that while loops and if conditionals are closely related, since each time a while loop iterates, it checks if its running condition is still true and ends if the statement is false. So it's going to check if the count is less than 3. If it is, then this is true. It executes. User UF says they didn't get the link. Let me grab the link again. And I'm sending it to you now. Okay. So in the example, the loop runs over and over again while the statement supplied to it remains true. Once the count variable is incremented to 3, then count less than 3 returns false and the loop ends. So this is the construction of a while loop. We have to use the keyword while and then the if statement and then the colon. So on the next line, we have to indent 4 spaces because this is a code block. Then print the loop instructions. Typically, the last loop instruction progresses a variable towards a state where the loop condition will return false. So if we don't give some sort of instruction that progresses the loop to end, then we're going to end up with an infinite loop. And infinite loops in programming are usually bad. So what happens if a while loop is coded in such a way where the Boolean statement will never return false? The loop will never end naturally and creates what is called an infinite loop. So infinite loops are bad. We see here we've got a while loop. While count is not. So remember that when we were talking about the if conditionals, this is one of the symbols we can use, and the exclamation point equals means not. So while count is not 0, it's going to print, and then the count is going to be increased by 1. So the problem here is that the count is always not 0. So the count will always so this loop is going to go on forever. So a lot of programs inside of Python are going to detect these kind of infinite loops, and they're going to prevent you from executing them if they see them. So if we go over to the online Python and try to write this program, so count equals 1. So while count is not 0, it's going to print the count, and then the count is going to go up by 1. So we're going to run this. So it just keeps on going indefinitely. So we need to stop this. Okay, so this is the infinite loop. I want you to try running the infinite loop. So try writing this program here. Count equals 1, while count exclamation point equals 0. Print count, and then count plus 1. Try running it, and then you're going to see that it goes up a lot, and then eventually it's going to stop because the website picks up that that there's an infinite loop going, and it's going to stop the execution of the script. Okay, so everybody, if you manage to run your infinite loop and you see a really big number over here, please type "it's infinite." Okay, I see some people are executing their infinite loops. Okay, although there are cases where programmers want to create infinite loops in their programs, unintentional infinite loops effectively halt program execution, leading to system memory issues, crashes, and other problems. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the break statement. The break statement is an instruction we can insert into programming loops, and when executed, the break instruction terminates execution of the current loop. Okay, so this is a special instruction that we can give inside of loops, and if this break instruction is executed, that means that the loop is going to end. Okay, so what do we have here? We have a while loop here, and it says while true. So this is a special type of while loop over here. While true means that this is an infinite loop. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to print the count, and the count is up here. And then the count is going to go up by 1. And then there's a special if conditional here. If count is equal to 4, then the loop is going to break. Okay? So this is an instruction. This is a way of writing the loop where inside the loop we can specify exactly where it's going to end. So if the count is equal to 4, then it's going to break. But inside of here, there isn't an instruction that tells the program when to end the loop. All right. So before we start messing around with this example uses the while true style of loop, which is an infinite loop by default, and requires another means inserted within the loop to terminate the loop properly. For example, the break statement. Okay, so let's try writing this loop over here. So in the code, so this is the onlinepython.com. So count is, we're going to make count 0. So while true means this is an infinite loop. So after we hit enter, we're going to write the instructions. We're going to print the count. And then we're going to print the count, and then the count is going to be increased by 1 plus equals 1. Okay, I didn't mean to insert that comment. Let me get rid of it. Okay, and then we're going to do an if statement. So if count equals. Remember, when we do an if conditional, if we're doing an if statement, we need to, when we want to compare something, we have to use the equal symbol. So if it's 4, and this is another code block. So there's this one code block, and then we write another code block inside of the code block, which means it's a double code block, which means it has to be indented one more layer. But there's just the break instruction here. Okay, so while true, print the number, print the count, then increase the count by 1. And if the count is equal to 4, then the loop is going to end. Okay, so let's try executing this one. Remember that inside of here, this is indented it's indented once, and then the if instruction is indented twice. Okay, so let's write this and then run it. You should see 0, 1, 2, 3, and then the loop ends. Okay, so give it a try. If you manage to successfully write the program, then please type we broke the loop. Okay, so it looks like we're breaking the loop. That's great. So we've got another instruction over here inside of our loop we can use, and this one is called continue. So the continue statement is an instruction that stops execution in the current loop and begins a new iteration of the loop. It differs from the break statement because it doesn't terminate the whole loop, just that one iteration of it. Okay, so there's, I guess we could call these cycles. So the loops are going to run in cycles. The continue statement, when we give this continue statement, we're going to end that cycle of the loop, but the break statement is going to stop the entire loop. Okay, so let's take a look at this example here. So for I in range 5, so this is a list of numbers, 0 to 4. And then there's going to be an if statement over here. So if I modulo 2 equals 1. So remember that the modulo mathematical operation is going to divide by a number and then get the remainder. So if the number divided by 2 and the remainder is 1, then we're going to continue. It's going to break the loop and then go to the next. It's not going to break the loop. It's going to break that cycle of the loop and it's going to go over to the new cycle. But if the modulo is not equal to 1, which means that it's an even number, we're going to print something is an even number. Okay? So this is going to run a bunch of times, and sometimes it'll print out it's an even number, and sometimes it's not going to. Okay? So this is an old way of putting integer names into the print statement, but let's use the new method. All right, so let's try writing this one. So over in online Python, so this one is for I in range, and this is going to be 4. Is it 4, or did I do... Let me take a look at the code one more time. So for I in range 5, okay. So let's do 5. So for I in range 5, we're going to do the if statement. If I modulo 2 is equal to 1, then that means it's going to be in odd number. We're going to continue. Okay? So if I modulo 2 equals 1, we're going to continue. But if it is not, then we're going to print. And we're going to print this as an F string. So we're going to put the F in front of the quotes. User LW needs the link. So I'm going to provide the link to that person. So user LW, when you load up the page, you're going to see that there's some code already there. What you need to do is delete the code that's already there before you start writing your own code, okay? Okay, so we're going to give this an F string, and then it's going to do, we're going to do these squiggly brackets over here. So I is an even number. Okay, so each time we're going to run this loop, first it's going to check if the number is odd, and if the number is odd over here, it's going to break out of the loop and it's going to break the cycle of the loop, and it's going to go over to the next cycle. But if it's not, it's going to print that the number is an even number. Okay, so let's try this. I think this is the correct syntax. Let me try running this. Okay, so it says 0 is an even number, 2 is an even number, 4 is an even number. Okay, so we did it. So here we're using the continue statement. So it's going to check if something is true. If it's true, then it's going to skip to the next cycle. Otherwise, it's going to print something. Okay, so everybody, let's try this. If you manage to get this result here, 0 is an even number, 2 is an even number, 4 is an even number, then please type in the chat, we continued. Oh, okay. So user NC, so what you need to do is you need to, in the print instruction, you need to put an F instead of in front of the quotes over here, just like this. And then the I, you need to put it inside of these squiggly brackets over here, okay? So these are curly braces or squiggly brackets. They have a bunch of different names, but you need to put the I between these and then try it again. So user LW, if you could mute your mic, let me help you with that. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. So let's move on. So just as we can use if conditionals within loops, we can also use the else clause to execute instructions in the case that the if condition returns false. So let's try another case. So we can use if, and then we can use else. So if something, then, or else we're going to do something else, okay? So if this is evenly divisible by 0, it's going to say it's an even number, or else we're going to print something is an odd number, okay? So let's try writing this one really quick. So what we're going to do is if I modulo 2 is equal to 1, we're not going to continue this time. We're going to print that I, we're going to print that I is an odd number. Okay, so if this is true, so I modulo 2 equals 1, we're going to print that I is an odd number. And then else, print I is an even number. Okay, so we need to format it correctly in order to do this. So first we're going to check if I modulo 2 is equal to 1, which means it's an even number. If it is, it's going to print it's an odd number. Sorry, I might have misspoke there. So if I modulo 2 is equal to 1, that means it's an odd number, and we're going to print that the number is odd. Or else, we're going to print that that I is an even number. Okay, so let's try this with let's try this loop right here. So I don't think I have any syntax errors in here. Okay, so remember that when we write the else keyword over here, we need to make sure that that this also has a colon over here, which means it's a code block. And just make sure that everything is lined up correctly like this, and then let's run this. So the result here is 1 is an odd number, 2 is an even number, 3 is an odd number, like this, okay? So try writing this code. If you're able to get it to execute properly, and it says odd number, even number, like that, please type in chat evens and odds. So one thing we need to keep in mind here is that we need to have our we need our colons. So we need a colon over here, we need a colon over here, and we need a colon over here. And remember, with the print statements, we're going to put F in front of the in front of the quotes, and the I is going to be wrapped up between these curly braces. Okay, so let's move on. So let's do a little quiz over here. So we've got our when will the programming loop end? We've got our code over here. My list is 1, 2, 3. For number in my list, we're going to print the number, and then we're going to append a number to my list. So everybody in the chat, can you tell me if the answer is the programming loop will end after the number after the last number in the list is printed, after the number 3 is printed, or this loop will never end? Okay, so before you answer, keep in mind that that the list method over here, append, is going to add an extra number to the end of the list. Okay, so the answer in this case is C. This loop will never end. The append instruction is going to add numbers to the list, which means every time the loop is executed, there's going to be an extra number on the list, which means that the loop is never going to end because more numbers are added to the list. Okay, so let's demonstrate this really quick. So I'm going to copy this code and I'm going to put it in my. So user LC, that's not a problem. I understand that that your school ends later than some other people. But if you have any problems with any of the stuff that you see in this session, just let me know, and I'll try to help you out after the session ends. Okay. So I'm going to paste in this code over here. So we're going to run this, and it's going to become an infinite loop. So we're going to run this. So it just keeps on going, and then we're going to need to stop. Okay, so it's an infinite loop because more numbers keep on getting added to the list. So I'm going to reload over here because it seems to be going a bit slower. Okay, let's move on. So programming loops, question 2. When will the programming loop end? So we've got while true, count equals 0, print the count, count equals count plus 1. If count is equal to 3, we're going to break. So which... Okay, so when is this programming loop going to end? So is it going to be after the number 2 is printed, after the number 3 is printed, or the loop is never going to end? Okay, so I see a bunch of different answers coming in. All right, so the reality of this question right here is that this loop is going to end never. So the loop will never end because the count resets each time. So this is, so it says count equals 0. So each time the loop comes back around to the beginning again, it's going to reset the count to equal to 0. So count will never be equal to 3, which means this is also an infinite loop. So this is why if you have some sort of variable that you're trying to count up to, you should never put it inside the loop. So you should never initialize the so if you're talking about a count that you need to count up to, never put this variable inside the loop. You have to put it outside the loop. So let's demonstrate really quick. So let's copy this. User NC says, can you explain where the count reset is? So the first instruction in the loop is to set count to 0. This instruction here sets count to 0. It prints the count, and then it adds 1 to the count. And then if the count is equal to 3, it's going to break. But each time it loops back around, then it's going to set the count back to 0. So let me demonstrate. Okay, so let's try running this loop. This is going to be an infinite loop because of this instruction right here. Okay, so we're going to run this. Oh no, wait, this needs to be indented. Okay, so let's run it again. So it just keeps on coming back as 0 because each time the loop runs, it's going to be count is going to be 0. Somebody needs the link to the onlinepython.com. Let me give it to this user T. Here you go. Okay. And remember, when you get to the online Python page, you need to delete the code that's already there. It will start with some code there. So the way we would fix this code is we would delete this count equals 0 inside the loop, and we would do count equals 0 outside the loop. Okay? So if we do count equals 0 outside the loop, then then the loop is going to work as intended. Okay? So let's run it now. So it just does 0, 1, 2. And then when count becomes 3, it breaks because the count is outside of the loop. So this is just something we need to remember when we're making our own loops. Okay? So next. All right. This is the last question. When will the programming loop end? Count equals 0. While count is less than 5, print count, then count equals count plus 1. Does the programming loop end after the number 4 is printed, after the number 5 is printed, or the loop is never going to end? Okay, so to people who think that this might be an infinite loop, the count is initialized outside of the loop. So the mistake from the last question, this is no longer a problem. So user M says the page just crashed. So if you run an infinite loop, then your page is going to become unstable. So after you run your infinite loop, what I recommend is that you reload your page, and then it's going to be okay again. Just remember to delete your instructions after. Okay, so in this case, the loop is going to run normally. While count is less than 5, means that the loop is going to end after the number 4 is printed. So after the number 4 is printed in the next loop, then count is going to be 5, because it prints before it adds to the count. If it printed after the count was added, then we would get to number 5. But because we print before we add to the count, it's only going to print until number 4. Okay, so let's write a program that uses some of the concepts we learned in this workshop. So we're going to run a little program. Let me get that from the GitHub page. So everybody, we have our exercises from last time and this time. So those are the picoctf exercises, as well as a little extra code over here. And that is in the GitHub page. And this is the link to the GitHub page that talks about the stuff we talk about in this workshop, okay? So in the last session, we took a look at the Fix Me 2 challenge and the Serpentine challenge. Today, we're going to do the Python wrangling challenge, but first we're going to write this code right here, okay? And so what you can do on the page is you can copy this code. User LC, I see your concern. We'll talk a little bit about that after the session is over, okay? Okay, so on the GitHub page, you can click on this button right here, and that's going to copy the code inside the code block. So we're going to copy that, and then we're going to go over to our online Python, and we're going to paste in the code we copied. Okay, so everybody, what I want you to do is I want you to take a look at this code right here, and I want you to tell me what this program does. So go ahead and in the chat box, I want you to type out what you think this code is going to do, and just type that into the chat box. We'll talk about it in about a minute or so. Just study this code right here. Okay, so user LC says it counts until it hits less than 21. Well, it count at so this line right here, line 2. So it's going to stop after. So it's going to stop after it the count becomes 21. Okay, so user CT says it says the loop is running, and every 5 times it says what the number is. Okay, yeah, that is true. So this instruction right here, if count is not 0 and count modulo 5 equals 0, which means that the count number is evenly divisible by 5, then it's going to print this count has reached count, and then it's going to say what the number is. And user LW says until it counts until 21. Okay. Okay, so user WW says the count starts at 0 and will stop after 20, then print loop is running. Okay, so everybody, let's try running this code over here. So everybody, I hope you copied the code from the GitHub page, If you didn't, I've got the link for it over here, and it is the code at the bottom of the page. I want you to copy that code by clicking on this button right here, and then paste it into the online Python page. So after you've pasted it, I want you to click on Run. So this is what the code does. So each time the loop runs, it's going to say loop is running, and then when the count equals to something that's divisible by 5, it's going to print out that the count has reached this number, and then it's going to keep on going, and then each time the count is divisible by 5, it's going to print out the number. And then after the count reaches 21, then it doesn't print and it stops. Okay? Okay, so if you managed to successfully run the program, please type in the chat, loop is running. All right, great to see everybody. Okay, so we like to finish up our classes by doing a little bit of picoctf. So let's run our picoctf challenge for today. Okay, so the picoctf challenge is, let me grab it. The picoctf is Python wrangling, and it is at this link. So the first thing we need to do inside of picoctf is we need to start up our web shell. So once you've logged into picoctf, you can click on this button right here, which is called web shell. And inside the web shell, we have to click on this button right here, which is a box with a arrow pointing out, which is called Pop Out Web Shell Terminal. Click on that. And then this is going to put the web shell in its own browser tab. Okay, you need to log into the web shell. This is my username. Please use your own. Let me grab my password. Okay, then paste in the password. So you can do right click and paste, or you can just type in the password, and then you're in your web shell. Okay, so before we go on, what we're going to do is we're going to make a directory to solve the. So, oh, somebody on YouTube is talking. All known studios says, "Can I get your number so we can talk?" Why don't you stick around after? Why don't you leave a comment on one of my videos and I'll answer there, okay? All right, so we're going to make a directory for this challenge. It's going to be mkdir, and it's going to be Python wrangling. Just make it all one word, like this. And then we're going to enter the directory. Okay. So if you do pwd inside your web shell and it says Python wrangling here, please type in the chat, ready to go. Okay, London W. Sorry, I mean LW. User LW. Are you not signed up for picoctf? So if you're not signed up for picoctf, you can go over to picoctf.org, and I think it's sign up. No, page not found. Picoctf sign up. Let me search for it really quick. Oh, register. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to send you the link. Okay, so to everybody else, if you're ready to go, let's solve the challenge. Okay, so it's going to be this challenge right here, Python wrangling, and one more time, I'm going to provide everybody with a link. So Python wrangling, this is an easy general skills challenge from the picoctf 2021 event. And it says, Python scripts are invoked kind of like programs in the terminal. Can you run this Python script using this password to get the flag? So what we need to do here is we need to download 3 files to our challenge directory before we can start the challenge. So the first file is, the link is here, this Python script. Right-click that, select copy link address, and then in the web shell, you do wget space, and then paste in the address. So you can right-click and paste. Okay, that's the first file, end.py. So the next file is this password. So the text is this password, right-click it, select copy link address. In your web shell, you're going to wget that one as well. Paste in the address. And that's going to be the pw.txt file. And the last file is the flag. So the flag over here is the link. Right-click on it, copy link address in the web shell, wget space, and then paste in the flag. Sorry, paste in the file address. Hit enter, and then that copies the last file. Okay, so after you've downloaded those 3 files, if you do the ls command, it should say there's ende.py, there is flag.txt.en, and there's pw.txt. Okay, so if we run the Python script, and we do that by doing Python and then space, and then we know that this is a Python script file because it ends in py.py. So ende.py, run this command here, and then it gives you a little message that says that tells you how to use the file. So ende.py, and then you have to use either -e for encode or -d for decode. So user LW, no problem, no problem. If you haven't signed up for picoctf, I can probably give you some help after the session is over. Okay. All right. So end.py, then you have to do the -e for encode or -d for decode, and then use the file, and then indicate the file name. So if we do Python, and then we're trying to decode -d, the file, and the file over here is the flag.txt.en, flag.txt.en. Wait, did I spell that correctly? No. I did I did the wrong thing. Sorry. It has to be Python and then the name of the Python file, ende.py, and then -d, and then flag.txt.en. Okay? So Python is the name of the program we're using, and then the Python file is this. Then we have to do -d for decode, and then we have to specify the file we're decoding, which is this right here. Okay, it's going to ask us to enter the password, but we don't have a password. Or we do have a password, it's in here. So, but we don't know the password right now, so we do test. And then it gives us an error because we didn't supply the right password. So how do we read the password? Does anybody know how we read the password file in here? Okay, user LC says cat, user NS says nano. We can use either one, but it's probably faster to use cat. So pw.txt is the password, right? So we're going to use cat to read it. So after we use cat to read the pw.txt file, this is the password we need. So we can just highlight this to copy it. And then we're going to run the same command one more time, which is python space end.py. And then we're going to specify decode with -d. And then we're going to run it on flag.txt.en. Remember, we need the password, so we need to copy the password first. So copy the password. We can even right-click and select copy. And then we run this. It's going to ask us for the password, and we're going to paste in the password. After we've pasted in the password, we hit enter, and then we get the flag. Okay? All right, so everybody, all you need to do is copy the password, go back to the challenge page, and then paste in the flag, click on submit flag, and we're finished. All right, so everybody, if you managed to finish this challenge over here, please type I decoded the file. Okay, and if anybody's having any problems solving the challenge, let us know in chat and we'll try to help you out. So what did we do? So basically we use the, so inside of this script right here, there's a certain function that lets us decode the flag over here. If you were to use cat on the flag, whoops, then you see that it's a bunch of encoded stuff right here. So what we need to do is we need to use the script with the password in order to decode the flag file over here, right? Okay, so before we finish the class, let's go over a little summary of what we learned, okay? So we learned about conditions. So conditions are used in programs to determine a program's course of action. So we used some if statements. So if something is correct, if something is true, then do something, or else do something else. They rely on the evaluation of Boolean statements to determine if certain instructions are performed or not. And we also learned about programming loops. Loops are tools that programmers use to run the same instructions multiple times. Loops can either run a preset number of times before terminating, or iterate through all the items in the list or string in the case of for loops. So this is a for loop. It runs a preset number of times before stopping, or run continuously until a predetermined trigger state is achieved in the case of while loops. So inside of a while loop, it's going to keep on running until some sort of statement over here comes back false. Okay, so what's next? In the next Hacker Frogs After School Programming Workshop, we're going to continue learning Python, and we're going to talk about functions. So functions are a really big topic. We're going to learn how to write our own functions, and that's going to be on Wednesday. So on Wednesday at the same time, we're going to do our next session, everybody. User LC says, do you count starting at 0 encoding? So inside of the for loop, we start counting from 0 over here. But there are a lot of circumstances where we start counting from 0 inside of programming. But yeah, to everybody who doesn't have any questions or any other concerns, you can feel free to leave the call, and we'll see you back on Wednesday. Thank you very much, everybody. But to people who need help and who want to talk a little bit more about any of the stuff that we learned in today's session, you can go ahead and type in the chat, and we'll talk a little more after we end our session. And I'm going to end the live stream right now.